communicating between Florida and Scotland. So we can get with your email. We'll be able to keep in contact, which would be great.
Your father and his brother with their mother.
Oh my goodness!
Isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And you look quite like my own mother, like Margaret
right?
Ann. Yes,
Wow!
yes.
Wow!
Well,
This is-
I only met Margaret once. That was an
This is
awful
my
long time
grandma
ago.
and dad
Alice,
and Doc.
Alice came to Toronto, and Alice
Yes.
lived 4 or 5 years, I guess, with us in Toronto.
Yeah, that yard.
There's no question.
she-
I mean, I can see you and your brother and your mother.
Oh yeah,
And that.
yeah, that's my mother.
Yep.
Yes, indeed.
See, my grandmother died when I was 18, and my dad died when I was 15. My grandfather died when I was 15, so I only have young childhood memories of my grandparents.
Yes.
Well, that's great.
You get mixed up with generations after a while.
It does, it does.
That's who it is.
So you lived in Boston. That's where your home.
Yes,
in Boston.
when I left, I was only in Maine for about 2 years. When I left Toronto, I went to Maine, and then came down to the nearest big city, which was Boston. And my family, Bill grew up in the greater Boston area. He grew up in a town called Brockton, city actually called Brockton. And so he was born in the U.S. My daughter, who's my eldest child, she was born in Toronto. That's Lois.
Lois, yes. I remember I told you that.
Lois.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
I had a sister.
Colin had a sister called Lois.
Oh, really?
Yes, and
Ah.
I said to him, yeah, it's not the first
Lois is,
relative
how much older is Lois than you? 3
Lois
years?
is 4 years
4
older
years
than me.
older
Yeah.
than you. Okay. Lois still lives in the Boston area.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
And then Bill, my youngest son, I had Lois is my oldest, my daughter. And Bill's the middle child. He's my second oldest
Yes.
of those children, and he now lives in North Carolina, which is about 2/3 of the way down to Florida. And my youngest son, James now lives right in Florida. He lives about maybe about 15-minute drive from us. He lives in a city called Apollo Beach, which is about 15 minutes from where we live. So
well,
we got them
that's
spread
nice.
all over.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, did your father? I know that your own father, he never came back to Lewis. I
No.
know that.
No.
Did he
It's
ever
such a
come?
shame,
Did he
you
ever
know.
come back to the UK?
No.
No,
Never
It's
did.
kind of a sad story. My mother came back a number of times,
Yes. Yes.
and he was supposed to come back around the time I guess his father died. I'm not sure.
Yes, I remember. And they were really they were planning that trip, weren't they?
Yes.
And then he died so suddenly.
He did.
Yes.
Yeah, he
He
did.
had been
Yeah.
He
out
went
with
down, got his
passport.
passport.
Yes,
and
I
had to-
remember. Auntie
got the
Alice told
passport,
me
the
that.
tickets, everything.
Yes.
And he came back home and he went out onto the veranda porch and said, "I'll go out and take a rest and have a drink."
Yes, I remember.
And my mother went out to see what was taking him so long, and he had passed away.
Yes.
Mm.
But he was a man who worked hard all his life, and when he finally retired, he didn't really know what to do with himself. He loved his job. He worked very, very hard, and he loved his job.
Yes.
And so I can't say he enjoyed retirement. He didn't enjoy retirement.
He liked
to work.
Yes, he
keep
liked
busy.
working.
And,
When my Auntie Alice went out to Toronto in 1953,
yeah, she stayed with us.
she stayed with you at Yard,
Right.
and then she got that apartment in, was it Pinewood Avenue, I think she had. Anyway, in 63 I went out with her for a holiday.
She
Oh.
was down at Eastgate this year, or Bournemouth.
She was, yes,
Yes,
I was
yes,
Bournemouth,
she was,
but I didn't meet the two of you because I suppose by then you were married, and because you would be in Boston by then. And,
Yes, right, right.
But I stayed with her for
Oh, did you? Yeah.
3 months, I think it was. 3-month
okay.
holiday.
Oh
yes,
my.
yes.
Wow.
And I went out to see you. I stayed with your father and mother. And I remember when I arrived, your father was all set to have a barbecue for me, you know, because this
Yes.
was a treat for me. So he had the barbecue
He
going
loved
and
to
the
do that.
chicken
He loved to
going.
do that, yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. And he took me round to the place where he worked.
Yep.
And showed me where he
Oh,
was
he was-
working. He was quiet, a quiet man, but
He was.
He was, yeah.
He was a quiet man, a hard-working man.
Yes,
And he,
yes. And he was keen on fishing, wasn't he?
oh,
Very keen.
Well, so was Derek, wasn't he? Derek?
Oh yes, because they
He was
were
fishing
always
in a big
talking
way.
about fishing.
And
Ah, well,
Now, Margaret's husband, he was into photography,
Yes,
wasn't he?
that is my father had a
That's what I
photographic
thought.
studio here.
That's
Yes.
what I thought, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, I remember seeing some pictures that have been taken. There's one I remember of you with a flower that was really a spectacular picture.
So
That's
you've been
my
down
daughter,
to, you've
is
been down to Sandwick and you saw where the
We
cross
did. This morning we
was.
drove down and we found actually the postman came by because we were trying to determine which house it was. And it's been 45 years, so he had just a vague memory. And of course, there's no number 1 on the house.
And then there's a big house in the back, a newer
Right,
house in the
Yes,
back.
right.
They built that wasn't there, so I said to Bill, it looks like it, but I'm not sure if it's it or not. The postman
that's
came
right.
along and he said, "Oh yeah, that's it."
Well, that was the house at the front. That was built by your grandfather.
Yes.
Oh, it was. Okay.
Well, not personally, but
No.
for
Yeah,
him,
yeah,
in the
sure,
20s,
for him.
When the 20s. So, but the croft went way up, way up the back,
Over the hill.
over the hill, you know, far, right
Oh, yes,
up the back.
yes.
And our uncle Farquhar, that's your father's brother.
Right.
Farquhar, that was the second oldest. I think Farquhar was the second oldest, called after his own father. But Farquhar, he married, fairly late in life,
Yes, yes.
so they had no family.
Right.
And he died before his wife.
Oh, he did. Okay.
And then she just gave the croft and everything over to her nieces and nephews. So
Oh,
it's all left to the family.
okay. That's
I
fine.
met him and his wife. I went over there, and he looked just like my dad. I mean, he looked just like Duncan.
Yes.
And it was.
That was the same time she came to see us, wasn't it?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was around 1970.
Was it?
We're not positive, but
No, I'd have to look back.
I think it was late. It wouldn't have been. Could it have been later than that?
75, 76.
It might have been. When did my father die? It was around the time that after he died.
Because we
Dad died. My grandpa. Your dad died in 73.
So, but after that.
Because I was a freshman in high school. He passed away when I was taking exams.
Okay, so we came over here after that.
Well, we didn't come
we
back
didn't
here.
come in. This
Until
house. This was
75.
Colin's father's home. You see.
Yes.
Ah, okay.
We were living further down the road, but we came up here. In fact, we exchanged houses with Colin's mother. 'Cause
Ah.
the house was too big for her in the garden and
He
everything.
had a lovely
So
house
that was
down there.
75.
75.
1975 we
Okay,
came.
so that's probably maybe it was then.
I came.
It was 75 or 76 when you
We'll
came.
be able to put all these pieces
I
together.
know.
Yes,
I
I
know.
know.
It's gonna be
I know.
marvelous.
But I always wondered if your father had ever come to the UK.
No, he never
We
did.
did, and we tried over the years to get him to. And first of all, he worked hard. He only ever got 2 weeks vacation. Never got more than that.
No.
And we tried for years, to get him to come. And he'd say, yeah, sometime.
Yes, he wasn't.
We never ever got him to come.
I think he was very homesick when he was younger. I think
Oh, he was.
he was
Yeah,
very,
he
very
was.
homesick. Yeah.
Well, he was in the Merchant Marine for a while, and then he
Oh,
was.
he?
Of course, he worked in the railroads for a short while, and he worked with lumberjacking. Did all kinds of things,
When
whatever
they went
he had
first.
to do to survive.
Yes.
And
Because he went out on the Metagama, didn't he?
out to work.
He went out to Canada on the Metagama,
Yes.
Yes.
and of course they had to take any job then. I
Yes,
suppose.
whatever.
Yes.
He would have been strong. He would have been a strong young man, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
He was, and they did.
Yes.
But there was nothing here for him. He
No.
couldn't find any employment,
No.
and it was just he had to leave. And so he was always saying, "Yeah, I will do it. I'm going to do it," but he just didn't do it.
Well, they were a very close family, and I think he did feel very homesick.
Yeah,
And
he did.
after my grandmother died,
Yes.
I think he probably just that was.
Now his father died first, right?
No, his
Mother?
mother died in 1945.
Oh, did she? Okay.
Yes.
Oh, all right.
In fact, his mother died the day my brother was born. She wasn't. My grandmother wasn't well. She was
Oh,
heart trouble, and she
Yes.
obviously just kept going somehow.
see that? Yeah.
And she knew that Derek was born, and
That's
she
interesting.
died the same day. So
Wow.
that's why I remember that there was 45.
You'll never forget the day. Sure, sure.
But then my grandfather, he didn't die until 1953, I think it was. My grandfather died.
Well, my first wife, Shirley, she did the same thing. She had cancer, and she fought it for years, but she said she was going to stay alive until she got to see his daughter born.
Yeah.
And she did.
Yep.
She stayed alive.
She
all
got to
that
be
time.
3.
But
Yep.
she was just determined that she was not going to pass away before she got to see her granddaughter.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so she did. And so he, that child now is
Well, she's
Out
25
working.
now. Yeah. Yeah.
thank the Lord, but I actually, my wife, and I, we have a great grandchild now.
Oh.
So we have my daughter Lois's son's son.
Oh, yes.
We have a great
No
grandchild.
wonder I get mixed up with the generations.
I know. No.
But I'm just astounded how the time goes. And
Yes.
somebody
Oh,
says,
yes.
"Well, what age are you?" And I have to think, boy, am I that old?
Well, I'm 75 myself.
Now,
Well, I will be
how long
75.
have you two been married?
Oh, 49 years last
Oh,
week.
bless your heart. Yeah.
That'll be 50 years
50
next
years
year.
if we're spared.
As we say,
Oh, you will.
As we say here, if we're spared, we'll be to see it 50
Well,
years next
And Colin, you were the sheriff?
I was, yes.
Ah.
They have another name. They have another name for it. Is it prelate or
I was Procurator Fiscal, which was,
procurator?
When you were
you would
here.
call it a district attorney.
District
That's
attorney.
what I thought.
And I was that for 30 odd years. And then I got, as they say, elevated
Oh, I did.
to the bench.
Uh-huh.
But our judges, they
Okay.
are called sheriffs.
Yes.
It all comes from the same
Okay.
original, as your fellows with 6 guns and
Yeah.
horses. I don't get either. But on the other hand, I get to sit on the bench and tell
okay.
people what to do. So I did.
District attorney to judge. Okay.
He's retired.
And you're retired.
He's retired. So what was your own work? I
I was an engineer.
Yes.
My dad was, of course, he worked as basically in plant maintenance,
Yes.
and he did. He was a civil engineer, looked after boilers and that,
Yes,
which he did in the merchant marine too. But I went to school and became a draftsman, a mechanical draftsman,
Yes.
and then I went on beyond that and became an engineer, and then went into engineering management later. So my whole career really has been around engineering, mechanical engineering, and I did that 40 odd years, long time, and I had a good career. I had all kinds of different industries that I worked in, so I had a chance to see a lot of things and do a lot of things. So I don't regret it at all.
No.
And my first wife, she was originally an accountant, worked for the telephone company as an accountant, and then she went into the library systems, and she worked as a librarian most of her life.
I think I remember her telling me that. When
Yeah.
she was
That's
here.
why we knew to go to the library to try and find.
I said, well, if I get any help, it'll be in the history or research department of the library.
There was a lovely lady over there who was the historian who helped us.
Long ago that we were here last time, there used to be a small post office over near East Street,
That's
a lot of
right,
years
that's
ago.
right.
Wow, that's
all
long.
gone.
It's 40
But,
years now.
I
We
did
know.
run across a postman, and he was pretty helpful. He told us a lot.
Yeah.
He was a young fellow, but he seemed to be really good and had a lot of information. So when
Did you tell him whose house you were looking for?
Yes.
I did,
Yeah.
You see, and the name is unfamiliar. No, McFarker. There's not many Farkers around.
No.
And all McLennans for that matter.
yeah, that's true.
So that's great.
So then we ended up finding that.
Now, what did you do for career?
Well, I worked for my father at the studio. I was a photographer too.
Ah, lovely.
Yes, so I left work when I married. We married in 1966,
Oh,
and I left work then, thinking I was going to have a life of leisure at home.
oh,
But unfortunately, my father died very, very suddenly, and so I went back. It was supposed to be to help them out, wasn't it, for a year or two?
Yeah.
And I did that, and I was 20 years later, and I was still.
You were still
there.
helping out.
I was still there. I enjoyed the work. It was good fun. It was nice work.
were they in Glasgow? Or were they,
No, here.
They were here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
don't know why I thought somebody went to Glasgow. I couldn't remember. I thought someone had, but
Well, my uncle Farquhar, yes, my uncle
Oh, that
Farquhar,
may be
he
what
was
it
a
was.
joiner, yes, he was working at the shipyards.
okay.
Well, I suppose during the war, maybe.
Yes, during the war.
Yes,
Oh,
when he came back.
okay. That was
He came
probably
back,
what it was.
yes.
My dad was working in Canada, of course, in the war plants there,
Yes.
and